in the moment.
Nice.
In that moment. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? I can't hear them.
Jeannie, I don't think they started.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yes. You.
Thank you. 102 pages is too much.
Okay, Lisa, all set? Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
this,
You all
this is
set?
Jeannie. This ain't Elise, it's Jeannie.
All
Yep.
right.
You're all set on my end.
Okay, sounds good. All right, welcome everyone to the May 2025 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. It is 6:35. I am
It's like every
proud to
season.
be sitting in for Chairman.
Like some over here. Jeannie, can you mute yourself? We hear background noise. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Wait, it's coming from
That's all
somewhere
right.
else too. No, okay, it's on there.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:35. And we will go to number one item, controllers update. John?
Thank you, Steve. I have maybe a question for Andrew before I get too far into it. So I know we have the annual report on here as well. I can handle them separately, they kind of tie in together. If you think that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you have some documents in front of you. I'm also going to hand out. See, there's a copy. Can I give you extra copies, Andrea, of the state's report? This is, for the aldermen who are not here tonight. That's okay. So this is, I'll get this on. So PDF, this has been emailed to you as well. So let me first touch on just the 25 update. I don't spend a lot of time on 25. I normally give you the monthly where we're at for the year. Not a lot has changed since the last update. We haven't moved past March internally, so the March numbers are the same as I reported last month. What is different with 25 is sales tax has been a yo-yo. We were down in the month of February, we were down 22.59% year over year. Had a conversation with the county comptroller. There's nothing that the county was made aware of, at least it was passed along to me, that made us think that that was due to any like adjustment or anything like that. The possibility exists that there could have been. I tend to believe that there's some uncertainty in the economy through some of the things that we're all reading, right? The news, tariffs, other things that are. That type of uncertainty can lead to a pullback in consumer spending. So we're still trying to process that information, and then March comes along and it bounces back, but not all the way. March was up 12.64% over the prior year. So February's down almost 23%. March is up 13%. On a year-to-date basis, we're down 4%. We're down $200,000. That could put our 2025 sales tax budget at risk. At this level, we would be at risk, right? We budgeted $20,300,000. What we brought in last year was $20,120,000 essentially, right? So we budgeted $180,000 this year above what we collected last year. It's about a 1% increase. Right now we're down 4%. Okay, so that's something we really have to keep an eye on. It's tough to predict where it's going to go. Because it's just been really wild swings. So hopefully the next few payments should paint more of a consistent picture of which direction it's headed. The last few days the stock market's bounced back a bit, so it's a crapshoot, right? But that kind of leads into our 24 financial thought. So few different things in 24. First, you saw the state controller's report, which was mainly geared towards 23. That's this beautifully crafted report that is handed out to New York State. I'm a nerd and I really like these things. I went through that at all. And so overall, my take on it's pretty positive for the city of Kingston. It speaks a lot about the different projects and the different, the different fronts that the city has been making advancements in. I think it is very complimentary of the city manager, elected officials, all the good work we're doing on. I had our bond counsel reach out to me and he said in the 40 years he's been doing this work, I don't want to quote him exactly, he said he's never seen a report this complimentary. So I think that says a lot to, overall to regard the city. That said, it didn't really get too much into the near term, financial pressures that I'm starting to see. It did mention some concern about long-term debt. In his oral presentation, I was down at the Rondell Center, and he spoke to that debt. And it's related to, vital projects the city's doing, and we're doing a lot of good work, but there's a lot of grant funding involved. But unfortunately, there's also debt that's sometimes required to take on as part of these projects. These advancements that we're making in this debt service that we were taking on, does long-term debt obligations, right? So, in the past, we're using some available cash to pay down some of the debt, but that's a small portion of that debt service that we're able to pay down. But we certainly see, and I agree with the comptroller, that debt service is going to be a pressure for the city for a little while. What we're seeing for these projects that we've taken on, whether it's equipment needs, you see all the infrastructure projects that come before you.
Yep.
When I first started here, there wasn't a lot happening. Steve may remember some of those times, but my first couple of years here, going back almost 20 years ago, there were a couple of bond mortgages a year. Now we're coming quite often for them. But once again, it's because there's a lot of progress being made. There's a lot of infrastructure needs being handled and met, and a lot of great projects that we're all seeing. So with the good comes the bad being the debt and the pressure that brings on. So in your financial packet, I apologize for the small print. You can zoom in on your PDF that I emailed you earlier. That last page is something I just kind of wanted to touch on with you. And that's like the last page of this printed. This shows the fund balance history in the general fund. And so what this is a snapshot. I try to track all different financial data, measurements, internal, external. But what this measures is what is our fund balance at the end of each year. And it's the column all the way to the right. And this goes from 2011 forward. I think that's when I started tracking it for this purpose.
Instead of printing any smaller next.
Probably not. I might go down a few more fund sizes here. So years ago, we had a fund balance that struggled to get to 10%. Back in those times, the city's bond rating was much lower. We were issuing what's called revenue notes, which are basically cash flow obligations to meet our needs, which are not looked upon favorably by the rating agencies. So back in 2011, you'll see the fund balance was, for a few years, there was hovering the 7% range. The city, we had a fund balance policy, I think, somewhere in that time of like 10%. And then over time, consistently, I'd say over the last decade and a half, we've been able to grow that fund balance from 11%, 13, 16, 18, 16, and then for the last 4 years, it was hovering somewhere in the 21, 22% range, which is good. I mean, the rating agencies like that. I mean, the rating agencies will always tell you, the more the better. The flip side is you don't want to sit on too much fund balance because of it's taxpayer money. You don't want more than what you need. So, the city was, I would say, the healthy fund balance. Our policy says 13 to 20 as our target range. So, we've been trying to get that number just under the 20. In 24 dipped a little more than just under the 20. We're down to 16.29. Okay, so we're right in the middle of that 13 to 20, maybe low middle. Okay, I mean, these are unaudited results. The fund balance could change a little bit with the audit. But we're sitting right in that area. So, when I look at it, I touched upon it in my email. I touched upon it in that communication to the council on, some of the reasons Part of it, we used, $2 million. We used $2 million planned fund balance withdrawals in 24. Some of that was to pay down debt. We used some of it to fund capital projects, equipment purchases. We funded some police vehicles. So to that extent, that use of fund balance will save taxpayers' interest costs in the future, right? We're using pay-as-you-go financing. That helps. On the flip side, we had to use $2 million of fund balance for everything. We had ambulance startup costs, and we didn't use all this because later on, ambulance revenue came in to offset some of this. So, but there were some, obviously, the costs for ambulance in 24 did exceed the revenues that came in. We had judgments and claims, if you remember those, requests coming in to fund some of these, our deductible payments, right? Some separation of service payments, other overages. So you had that going on. So the fund balance did drop. I mean, it's been the first year in a while where the fund balance declined as much as it did. Not a terrible amount. We had planned on using $1,890,000 of fund balance is what we used to balance the budget. We ended up using $1,944,000. Each year we plan on using fund balance, and the history, if you kind of look at this chart, you spend a few minutes on it, you'll find that the last few years we planned on using fund balance to balance the budget. And we ended up not even using that fund balance. In fact, we actually added to the fund balance. So like if you look at, say, the third column to the right, starting with the number 1,622,306, you see the number on there, right? That's what I would call a positive budgetary performance. That is the excess of where our fund balance ended up over what we had projected it to be based upon using fund balance to balance the budget. Well, like the last 3 years before 24, we were every year over 2 million to the good, right? So we ended up much further ahead than we had hoped to be, or at least projected to be in our budget. Last year's, we were actually very close to what we had budgeted, right? So some people would say that's great, and I think to report back to our taxpayers, say, okay, we got that fund balance back in range between that 13 and 20, right in the middle, it's right in that sweet spot.
Right.
That being said, I think you have a number of pressures, facing us for 26. You have a fund balance now that's lower, right? So now your ability to use some of the fund balance to balance budgets going forward is decreased. In a perfect world, we wouldn't use 2.9 million again, we would use a lower number. I do see additional debt service costs coming on. You have bargaining unit contracts that are coming on board. And then I want to make sure. So it's a copy of this. Your bargaining unit contracts are coming on board. We have rising employee benefit costs, certainly coupled with uncertainty in revenue. And sales tax has become a very significant part of our budget. It's years ago it wasn't quite proportionally to property tax, it wasn't as relevant. I mean, it's always been significant, but it's now neck and neck with property tax, our two largest revenue items in our budget. So as sales tax goes, and to a large degree, the pressure on our budget goes. 4% decline in sales tax revenue would equal, roughly a 4% increase in property taxes. So let me just kind of like using that logic there. So, and that, like I said, the sales tax, we're gonna have to wait and see, but certainly I see that, I said this in an email, 26 budget, significant amount of pressure. I would expect that'll be as harder than the 25 budget. A lot of it's going to depend on what happens with sales tax. If sales tax bounces back and it's, we see significant growth again, certainly will help. But a number of factors are pointing to a tougher year. I still think the city's in good fiscal standing. Based on everything I've given you, our cash flow is fine. Our ability to meet our needs is fine, but, you know, from a budgetary standpoint, I certainly see pressure for, you know, not just for next year, but for the next few years. You know, for, you know, the reasons I stated, you know, we're doing a lot of projects. We are seeing some revenue slow down. You know, last 4/24, you'll see this one chart, the sales tax was growing exponentially, right? I think it's on the last page of, and if you can, on my normal, that financial update, that second page of that, the narrative, take a look at that when you can, and because that's where I'm trying to, you know, drill down on some of these monetary and pressure costs, but you know, you'll see that the growth in 21 was over $3 million in sales tax growth year over year. That can fund a lot of expenses. That can fund a lot of initiatives that the city's taking on. Then the growth drops to 1.2 to 23. It's not 553 to 24. It increased 546. So we met our budget in 24. This year, you know, we could be this, you know, trending towards going negative, right? So, you know, that is an area of concern, certainly. I probably have said a lot, maybe haven't touched on everything you're thinking, or but certainly would like to try to field any questions you have. And, you know, once again, I'm always available for a one-on-one meeting, phone call, whatever, but I think it's important to kind of get this message out early now. And I think we should be cautious with spending. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and you know, just kind of foreshadow 26 budget cycle as well.
I shoot you. I don't know who raised first. Bob, go ahead.
Okay.
You sit next to me.
When's, I've got some comments on your year-end report from last year. What I'd like to do is write it down and send it to you. So
Sure.
I could do it.
Sure, absolutely.
And then you can answer,
Absolutely.
tell me that there's.
And Michelle.
I'm just curious as if we have like any updates about federal clawbacks or how we're standing with grants.
At this point, I have not made aware of any programs that have been cut, at least nothing that's trickled down to my level.
Okay.
I know there was concern over one of the forestry grants. The last I heard that was,
I heard
restated. So, but I haven't heard anything else.
Okay.
I will say, you know, and once again, our ARPA grant was fully expended in 24 for reporting purposes. So, you know, the lion's share of our grant funding is state funded. And I know, you know, the state budget can depend on also what's out at the federal level. So, and we're cognizant to that, but I haven't been made aware of anything else.
Michael?
Yeah, I was curious if the cannabis sales tax revenue, have we gotten like did we get a quarterly report? Has that changed? And how does
There
that?
really hasn't been much there. So let me just pull up that data. The last cannabis sales tax check we received, we made inquiries with the county. The county is investigating or looking into that in a nutshell, it was believed and it was also determined that New York State Office of Cannabis Management, in our case, wasn't necessarily distributing the funds to the right place. So we did get the county controller involved. I think it's now with the county finance department. They're trying to reconcile that data. That's where that stands. So we haven't done a check in a while, but you know, we're continuing to have conversations with the county. In terms of dollar amounts, these aren't overly significant budgetarily, but we want to make sure it's right. I think that the city's receiving the rightful amount. But yeah, there's some back and forth between the county and the state on that. I don't want to speak. I have an idea of what may have been happening in terms of why things weren't being allocated properly, but I haven't received an affirmation as to why, whether it's a zip code thing or it's right. That's come into play with sales tax conversations.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Have you, the state budget just got passed.
Mhm.
You don't have that information yet, so.
No, we did. I mean, we looked over, some excerpts that the city is a member of NICOM, New York Conference of Mayors. I'm personally, on behalf of the city, a member of the New York State Government Finance Officers Association, so we get excerpts, highlights. So, there is some good information in there. I think the one of the tidbits that'll help us is the city in 24 received what's called temporary municipal financial assistance. It was a one-time payment. The city will receive that again. So, budgetarily, that's a pickup. The city has not budgeted that in the past. So that's a good thing. There's other things that are kind of status quo budgetarily, but yeah, we've looked at it.
So no surprises, no dramatic surprises.
I don't know that there was really any surprise. That it seemed pretty much what we're, if anything was positive, I would say.
And what is the level of temporary public assistance?
It's a neighborhood of $300,000, so it's something, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, we receive, I give you the number. Give it a sec.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're trying to call this, I look at it as AIM, additional AIM.
Right.
They put a different name on it. So maybe it sounds better, but, it's essentially, it's unrestricted aid. The city can use it in any fashion that it chooses to. Just wanted to look at it. 356, 394 was the number. So.
Thank you for the explanation of the fund balance, because that was the one thing that I saw that sort of popped out in
Yeah.
the financial report. So thank you for that explanation.
Anybody else?
When you get those calls from your constituents that, when the city was sitting on the fund balance, it was above the target levels, and now we're back within, and, but quite frankly, it's a good thing we're there, because, allowed us to fund, the ambulance startup, so, some other, pay-as-you-go debt, other things that, could have led to some more financial difficulty had we not had, adequate financial backing. So, I continue to keep you updated, and if you have questions, just let me know. Other than sales tax this year, the budget overall seems to be, the results are pretty in line with the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, we will move on to item 2. Mr. Bent, would you like to join us here?
Sure. Yeah. And I might switch seats with.
Why don't you have a seat at the end?
Yeah.
Or you could pull up another chair too.
Yeah, wherever you're comfortable.
This is good. I can see everybody except the people behind me, but.
Yeah, they're gonna see the back of your head, but that's all right.
That's all right.
So I didn't put this on the agenda because there was some personal information, so did anybody not get a hard copy of this item?
I don't think it.
Give us some shelters.
All right, since if this is your first time seeing it, so we'll take a minute for everybody to just read this letter. Very good. I'd like to thank you for this letter. This is, pretty clear what you're looking for. Cutting right to the chase. I spoke to Mr. Green, right? I spoke to you. But this is pretty clear what we're asking. I'm not sure I'll have to go into executive session.
I was gonna make the comment, I'm glad you had the letter and read through it because it really shortens what I would have otherwise had to say, but there are a lot of names and a lot of timeframes in the letter, which I think would help if I could have the opportunity just to summarize.
Yeah, please do.
Just to kind of clarify the timeline. Would be my object. About a year ago, Mr. Green, who's a client of mine, called me and said he was interested in possibly bidding at a foreclosure sale for some property in the city of Kingston. And as I do with all my real public clients, I said, well, we need to do a title search right off the bat to be sure that if you do become a successful bidder, that you'll know what liens there are against the property. And that was done. And during that period of time, the title company became aware of the fact that there were building inspection fees that had invoiced against the prior owner, whose name was Christine Polenko. She owned the property at 57 Lindsay Avenue, as I understand, for quite a few years, and it fell into a pretty poor state, and the building department did
You're
what
being very generous.
Actually, I can say I personally even saw it, and I remember it myself. In any case, over a period of time, as she, I guess, became ill and eventually died in January of 2021, the property was a real mess. And the building department was doing what they usually would do, is aggressively trying to put pressure on the owner to get it paid. Bear in mind that this had been going on for many years. And in addition to that, because she died, the bank found it necessary to bring a foreclosure action and get the property sold so their loan could be paid off. Our title company advised us at the time that Mr. Green was the successful bidder, and we did have a lien search. I hope that's on my phone. If it is, I really apologize. First thing you do when you go to church is you turn your phone off. I apologize. Mr. Green was a successful bidder, and the title company evaluated these inspection fees and advised us that their decision based on their corporate counsel was that they did not constitute liens against the property, and that were free to buy the property without that burden, which happened on May 24th of 2024. I do want to say that although these building inspection fee invoices did go out throughout 2023 at the rate of $1,000 a day for months and months and months, which is why they accumulated to $149,000 over time. At that time, of course, Mr. Green was not the owner of the property. Christine Polenko, the owner of the property, had been dead for several years at that point. So they weren't really accomplishing their desired purpose, obviously. We closed on the property, even though there had been some efforts made by the bank to clean it up. It was still a pretty sorry mess, and Mr. Green brought some photographs if you'd like to see them of the before and after. I don't know if that's useful to you.
Sitting trouble with my computer, I do on all the manuals of the show. The rest of it is sort of the before and the after. I don't know if you're familiar with the.
I am certainly very familiar with it,
So
unfortunately.
it was a little bungalow that was in a neglected sort of way. And we, our intent was to sort of rejuvenate some old housing stock into a energy efficient, place, use more before and afters of the back of the house, but, you know, we were looking to do something nice here and it's still, we're still working on it, still a work in progress, well, I'll let Tom should, you can pass things around, but, you know, our intent was to, do something good and,
It's very nice.
So, well, really, kind of to summarize, Mr. Green bought the property in good faith, understanding from his title company that there weren't any liens on the property, related to these fees. And, I also was in contact with, Josh Popovitz, who represents the, county administrator of estates, because, technically those fees are still owed by the estate to the city, I would say. I also understand that the estate, not surprisingly, is not in financially able shape, and I don't know whether those are collectible against the estate, in any event. But the bottom line, I think, is that Mr. Green and his daughter, Shelley, who's also here, bought the property in good faith, believing there were no liens against it other than what were known to be. We paid off the mortgage. Mr. Green and his family paid off the mortgage and, commenced to doing what the city had wanted for many years, which is to get the property, cleaned up and made productive again, which he's doing. The last thing to say is that in the fall of 2024, I assume largely without knowing all of this history, the Common Council voted to add those long past due fees to the 2025 general tax bill. So when that came out in January, first thing I got was a phone call from Mr. Green. I thought these were not liens. I said they weren't, and they aren't. I did submit to my title company to reconfirm that fact, and they wrote back and told me, no, we're not responsible. They weren't liens at the time the property was purchased. So my request is that in fairness to Mr. Green and the process, and also to the city in its efforts to get the property cleaned up, it seems to me that since the Common Council voted to impose those fees, make them tax liens, that equity would require them to consider removing them and putting the property back to where it was. I guess I should also add too that Mr. Green did send in a check to the city controller to pay the taxes minus that $149,000. Of course, that was returned because there's a policy. I understand you can't accept partial payment of tax bills. So, but there was an effort to pay them in any case. And that's where it stands. So if the committee saw fit to do so, I would hope they might recommend to the Common Council that they resolve to remove that as a tax lien.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have questions. I don't know if you're aware of our process where like we get, it's not just a singular instance of, you know, putting those, that one piece of property onto the tax, but it's
Yeah, of
like
course.
pages and pages. So it's not like anything that was like singled out.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be implied the Common Council did anything. You know,
Yeah, no, I just wanted to.
along the line, I mean,
clarify. Yeah.
it's kind of a pro forma thing. It makes perfect sense. If someone's not paying their fees for many years,
Yeah.
put it on the tax bill. That makes perfect sense. Problem here is that that person who was the owner is not a different owner. So it's not that person anymore.
But you hinted at the previous owner, the estate also has this tax lien on, is that?
No,
Oh, I thought that's what you.
No, what I somewhat gratuitously offered is that the fees that were rendered in the form of invoices to Christine Qualenko are bills. And in an estate setting, any outstanding bills against a deceased person can be collected from their estate if there's money to pay them. So, you know, arguably, those fees maybe are still due to be paid by the estate if they have money to pay it. I don't know. I'm not the attorney for the estate, but they weren't really liens. In fact, they weren't liens at the time our sale took place. So now to make them liens in this context is inequitable.
Okay. And think we'll
Yeah.
executive session.
I think executive session, if you have questions, because there's no reason for executive session, but, if you have questions for Bill, we can go into attorney-client.
Oh, attorney Cole
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
useful.
Yes.
So we're gonna go into attorney-client session, so we're asking the who's not on the council to head out to.
Okay.
Chambers.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we can go.
Yes,
Should we stay around?
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Okay.
Where's the,
Would you contact, so I don't know, the other side, Jerry, I'm going forward, you know, like. Thank you.
pretty sure.
Okay, we are, we are out of session, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, item number 2. We will be tabling this for 1 month while we decide some options. That we are pursuing. It's about what we can tell you right now.
Okay,
But we'll be working with the Corporation Counsel's office and us and arrive at some options here, hopefully.
okay, well, I've had a good deal of communication with Corporation Counsel's office on this matter already, so I would invite them to reach out to me with whatever is being thought about,
Certainly, I mean.
if it's appropriate.
You certainly have enough information there,
Yeah,
so I would think they would involve you in the conversation.
yeah, all right,
All right?
okay,
All right, great.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you for the presentation and for bringing it to our attention.
yeah, okay, well, I hope that this is something that happens a lot, but it could. Good to know how different situations come on, for sure. All right, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, item number 3, Chief, what do you got for us?
Hey, yeah, they're busy.
I don't,
All those batteries.
yeah.
All right, what I'm asking for is a transfer of funds from the DASNY grant, which is the dormitory authority for the state of New York. I reached out to Senator Hitchie and had a conversation with her in her office, and she applied for a grant for us for a brand new ambulance in the tune of $263,000. So what I'd like to do is do the transfer of the grant money to the line. We plan on purchasing a vehicle, desperately needed vehicle, off the lot. So right now the grant sits up in Albany and it's at the Senate Finance approval. Gone through several layers and now it's like on the home stretch. But I want to be ready that when we get the final approval, that I can go either Syracuse or Long Island and purchase the ambulance and have it up and running within 1 month. So I'm looking hard at midsummer to end summer, having a brand new ambulance.
It's an ambulance. right?
Ambulance, yes,
Okay. Is
Brand
that,
new.
brand new, brand new.
Okay, because all the other ones have been used.
is that about the going rate? I mean, I have no idea what an ambulance would cost.
Well, this ambulance has, we'll have it's called a power load. 2 of our ambulances have it right now, which means that stretcher, when you bring the stretcher out, wheel it up to the back of the ambulance. It's battery operated and the power load will actually take the stretcher up and put it into the ambulance.
Okay.
And what that does is minimizes the potential of having back pain once you go up. And so that is a piece of equipment that's attached to it. The ambulance itself is upwards $219,000. And then the retro,
So that's included in this?
yes.
Okay,
Yes. But this is only if the grant's awarded.
right. Yeah.
And what's the timeline for finding out whether the grant is awarded?
Right now is the final step in the Senate, the Senate financial.
Like another month.
Like the
right?
final one, maybe
Yeah.
another month yet.
Okay.
But I'd like to be able to, if we do get it,
To be ready to go.
then, yeah, so they have them on a lot. We were in constant conversation with the people of Syracuse.
Is there a match? I'm sorry, I don't have the paper. Okay, and to outfit it, would we be able to take stuff? Will it be a basic or advanced?
It'd be an ALS, it'll go right to the front line for ALS.
Okay. We'll just be able to take equipment on
Correct.
another bus, and put it on.
They're actually gonna use the actual gurney out of one and put it on this one.
Okay. And can we sell the
I've never,
retired?
Can we retire one? Or we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
See how it goes now.
You need them all.
Right now, there's, you know, every day, fourth one goes out someplace.
So
That's a spare one.
This will bring us up to 5.
And that's the desired, and that's the desired number, is 5 at this point.
At this point, yes,
Yeah,
because
okay.
that would give us, you know, mental health losses, plus by itself.
Yeah.
This would give us 3 frontline CLS losses,
Yes.
and we have a reserve
Okay.
if one breaks down. Right now, how busy it is, we can't afford to have them break down.
Right.
We have to have a replacement for that, and once
Right.
we have,
if you
have
want to,
right
yeah,
now.
you I rate.
How often are in need of repair?
They, they're complicated, tweak here, tweak there type of thing. We're in pretty good shape right now, knock on wood, but tomorrow, but this will give me two 2016 ambulances. And the 2012, and the new one's 2025. And then the spare will be 2006. So, having that backup allows me to send the ambulance needs immediate repair, send it out.
Right.
So you get the backup. Because the city, the ambulances run all day constantly.
I'm sure.
You'll see them, you hear them,
I hear it.
but 3 ambulances, mental health is just outside of the biggest move around the city, you can notice. But that's what I'm asking for, it's all dependent on the award of the grant.
DASNY is the hurdle, though. I would assume that the Senate Finance Committee will approve this stuff.
When we got contacted through, Hinch's office, yes, you know, they were saying that that's final. Normally don't get there unless.
Yeah.
It's, awarded. It's all pending on the award. If you don't get awarded, then
Then you can't get it.
they can't get it. Correct.
Okay. Seems like a good thing to do. I hope the money comes through.
So, I.
I know.
We were missing the signature boxes, so I'm just rewriting that.
I wasn't. I don't know.
Let's see. Yeah. Okay.
I must see that file, not that.
The ambulances are busy, it's, I don't know, good and bad. See the revenues in John's report. Significant.
Yes, they are. They're constantly pushing.
Yeah.
It's the average response time.
To your house on dispatch 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
Because they're all central out of the centrally located at Central Station. That was one of our things was the automatic here.
Right, that's
So that if we put one downtown, if somebody from Sony Bonds look at the 3rd ambulance out. You know,
that's fine.
that's all the way across.
So if we get it, will we have indoor space for it, like? Okay.
Full medical. Okay,
Okay.
Well, we have a committee report here, so. It reads, resolution of the common council to transfer funds from a pending DASNY grant to motor vehicles contingent on awarding of the grant.
You don't have to say all that.
You don't want me to,
Those are just the line.
is anybody interested in the account numbers? $263,000, 0 financial impact. Motion?
Second.
Is it, okay, question? Is this a diesel, is this coming up?
Yes.
The diesel, okay.
no, yes,
Gasoline, okay.
yes.
Okay, I'll call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
When opposed?
Chief, can you sign it when it comes around?
Okay.
Wait, The first meeting for taxable.
Congratulations. Isn't life surprising? Well, thank you for working on getting the new ambulance, for getting a grant.
Well, thank you for keeping us.
Oh, yeah, oh, definitely. No, it's really important. What you do is essential.
You are, we haven't lied about it. We really never put it. We really have. Bring it back and forth together. And we are making that third ambulance South goes with myself, when assistant chief.
Yeah.
You know, or deputy chief in charge of EMS. My third ambulance South, be a medic. Had we had the graduation completed with the firefighters. There'd be some majority of time for 3 medics on duty.
Nice.
So there'll be a floater medic that will make show up in an engine. But someone's gonna be bringing the paramedic ambulance to them. So that they have all their equipment.
Do we have a good list of backup, like civil service? In line for, if, you know, if there's any retirements or, yeah. It's like,
We're off the testing in June. That's what
Okay.
paramedics have to be a paramedic to take the
to
test.
take it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all organizations are far, paramedics are far.
And one will get his medic in July. And another will get his medic in December. And there's a third one in line.
Good. That's something to be proud of.
It is great.
Us in New York is that the only places that have all of our staff equipped medically,
I mean, what, yeah, what do you?
like our firefighters. Our firefighters are EMTs.
Our firefighters, EMTs,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not normal.
New York City is.
New York City.
Yeah.
But I
New
think,
York City is, there's many fire departments in New York State that have to be basically
okay, good.
to be that. So the green paramedic are the next level.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right.
You can go home now.
okay, next, we have a budget transfer from the DPW chief, who was not here, but I think it's pretty explanatory.
I should point out, there's two of them there, Steve.
Or two.
Yeah,
Really?
I think there may have been something missing in the package. There's like a page missing in there. There are two.
I only have.
No, I think the second, right, the second one has zero impact, and the second one has $65,000.
Yeah, I think the attachment to $65,000 one may have been missing.
They both say the same thing, the reports.
Once,
Oh, that's transferring from someone.
sorry, yeah, once it's internal transfer, there's attachment that's zero impact, and the other is a contingency transfer.
They'll cover the cost,
Yeah,
but we're not seeing the two in front.
and I have that. It's the contingency, just taking some contingency, putting it into the same account with the other transfers. Placing it in.
Got it.
I should point out that, you know, we talked about the financial, we're a very small contingency this year, $200,000.
Right.
You know, they try to find internal funds to fund this, so to some extent they did, but
Yeah, but it's like,
Yeah.
one to the other.
they're gonna go from 200,000 down to maybe 34 and change.
Right.
Guess where they will money this year. So
No more funds, yeah, no more contingency
we're a
requests.
third of the way through, I have one here too, so I should. But
Oh, yeah.
same reason though, I was trying to find it, I did find the term, what's that? Yes, after tonight, right. But, I think as we get later in here too, I mean, we'll have a better idea if there's, some vacancies that we can pull some money from.
Okay,
But it's just so early yet to start pulling from personnel accounts.
We're gonna start with that one, Steve, and then I'll.
Okay. All right, first is the transfer of funds from contingency to cover the cost of retirement payouts. The estimated financial impact is $65,825.
Even the attachment.
That is actually the committee report. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Second request from DPW is a resolution of the Common Council for an internal transfer of funds to cover the cost of retirement payouts. Financial impact is zero. Have a motion?
Second.
You? In favor?
Aye.
One opposed?
Yes, you have the attachment for that, let's see, right?
Right, I don't have an attachment.
It's 25,000, right? So, this is
That's the one with zero financial.
one with zero financial impact. What, did you just read that? It's very. That's this
I've
one.
got, did I staple it to that by mistake?
It's 65.
This is the one that shows
Oh,
25,000.
well, yeah, this is a different one. We have too much here. These 225 need to go to. These have to come out of this instead. Who's the?
Yes,
And then this is the.
You got that?
Yeah, but she's done.
First, we don't need her vote.
She's over that. You don't need that. She's.
No.
That's
No.
the one you should. This is.
You just.
like it, just not sure. Right. So, Michelle, this replaces this.
But
Oh, yes, yes, this replaces. That's good. Yeah, good. Okay, I think these.
But we don't really need another person to sign off because we've got it.
That's one you need every all the time. I need that. That's one
Well,
thing.
I guess that could be an issue.
Oh, the applicant.
But then she could do it.
Everyone needs.
I don't think it would be appropriate.
Good. That's the zero impact one time.
We could both.
Didn't I send that?
That was the same as the. So building, like, during the actual committee reports,
Yeah.
had already drawn up and signed.
So who?
By the way,
Bob and Sarah?
Bob and Sarah.
Steve.
Oh, there you did fine.
It was there.
This month, but next month.
Development
and housing.
Yeah.
He's been available because I think that I couldn't.
Spring.
Having him come in, talk about when they could in place, and of course.
That's a good thing, right? People were tenants who have trouble complaints and people were. Yeah, it's nuts.
So he'll be coming in and
Okay, stop there a little bit.
we'll remind you.
I'm not like.
I'll send out.
Okay.
You're.
I'm public.
You're there.
Oh, but I'm putting them on public safety.
Oh, you're putting it on public safety?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so it's on your, in your committee. Sorry, that's right.
It's, you know,
I'm getting them confused.
I understand it's a problem, but, you know. It's a problem.
Okay, John, you there?
Yes, I am here.
All right,
Evening.
we got item number 5, Carolina Avenue sidewalk. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this area on the south side of Edson Elementary School has been the site of numerous complaints, anecdotally conflicts between people walking to school and people driving, and in addition to that, people queuing up to drop off their kids. So the preferred solution looks to be to install some sidewalk here. We've taken a preliminary look at how to do it. This request tonight is for authorizing a project in the amount $100,000 to construct sidewalk on one side of Marylena between Voorhees and the school boundary. Also tonight, you have in front of you the environmental assessment form, EAF. So we'd be looking for Common Council to make a finding of the significance of the environmental impact based on your review of that information.
So there's no sidewalk there now? I used to be up there on the sidewalk.
There's one short section of very poor blacktop sidewalk on the north side, but it's a sidewalk, currently a sidewalk to nowhere.
Is there a picture or a plan or?
I don't have a plan. I can share with you like the street map that would.
Okay.
If you want me to share my screen, I could just point out, you know, the basically from Voorhees to the school boundary is what we're talking about.
Michael?
Voorhees, oh, sorry. I'm explaining it to people.
So when we build the sidewalk, do we own it or does the property owner own it?
The city owns it because it'll be within city right of way. However, the owner has the same ordinary maintenance responsibility of any sidewalk in the city. So ordinary shoveling and keeping vegetation clear of the sidewalk would fall, that the responsibility would fall to the adjoining property owner.
Who was first?
I think Henry was.
But if you wanna go.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about so the next steps in this process would also be speaking to the property owners. Do we have to go through the legal aspect of getting their, alerting them to the fact that the city is gonna be using the easements?
Well, we currently have a 50-foot wide right of way width for Marylena, so there is available space. However, I do anticipate we'll need some grading easements from some of the adjoining owners. And so we will be reaching out to those adjoiners. At this point, we're going to obtain a boundary survey so that we know exactly where the roadway sits within that 50 feet.
Okay.
And then a decision will have to be made to construct the sidewalk on either the north side or the south side. After having reviewed it in the field, I could honestly say it could go either way at this point. But once we have the boundary survey in hand, we'll be in a better position to select one of those. And at that point, we would discuss with the adjoining owners what we may need from them in terms of a grading easement. And that's probably when they will find out that, yes, we intend to construct a sidewalk, partly in along their frontage anyway.
Right.
Hi, John. I have more questions on so is there do you actually have a plan of this project? The reason why I'm asking is because I'm wondering if you're following the zoning street design guidelines or if you're deviating from that, and just to make sure that we're tracking with our zoning code.
Right. I'm pretty sure the zoning code would call in this transect would likely call for sidewalks on both sides. However, in that case, I'd be asking you for $200,000 instead of 100. So, if that's the Common Council's direction, we can do it that way.
Well, not necessarily. I'm just making sure that we're following our zoning code.
Right.
Because I know we can deviate from there,
Yes.
but there's a process to do that. So that's why I wasn't sure if you had a plan enough that you know that you deviate, or that you don't know, or that you definitely aren't.
Well, we'll follow. I mean, the standards would call for a 5-foot sidewalk. That is what we intend to construct, is 5 feet wide. There's currently also, unfortunately, no curb on the street. So we have to construct that as well. So those elements. And then we would be looking at narrowing the street as well. However, there is on-street parking permitted on this section of Marylena. So all of those elements have to be considered in whatever final width for the street, the curb layout, the snow storage space, the width of the sidewalk at 5 feet. All of those things have to be looked at.
On the other side. Anybody? Michael?
And doesn't in the code, the Complete Streets Advisory Council need to also weigh in on this?
Deviation.
Oh,
That's
more
why
if it's a
it was
deviation,
asked.
okay.
Right, because that only happens when there's a deviation, right, John?
Right. Yeah, and I guess, we could say, okay, we're not doing a full street here. We're effectively doing half of a street. We're going to pick one side and make it comply effectively with what the zoning code would require in terms of a sidewalk. It's not it's not an attempt. I mean, this neighborhood in general lacks sidewalks, from Lucas Avenue all through, Marylena, Merritt, Boulder, Granite, Voorhees. In general, there are few or no sidewalks. Where they do exist is often in isolated pieces.
So I'm just looking at Google Map and this one piece of sidewalk. I don't know if that's the north or south side, but where there's there is sidewalk. Is that 5 feet wide or was that?
It's probably only about 3.5 to 4 feet wide, and it's would not be considered accessible under the Americans with Disabilities Act due to the cross slope, and it just sort of ends abruptly at a rock outcrop.
That's a weird little sidewalk. Like, why is that even?
Yeah, and I could just testify, and all of you know, I've come before all of you for signs of no parking. This has just been a sort of very difficult and challenging walkway because there are no sidewalks. People are walking in the streets. If there are cars parked on both sides, there's only one lane of traffic. It is such a jammed up situation. And I have to say, really frankly, it's really amazing that nobody has actually been injured. Kids will jump onto people's lawns to get out of the street because a car is coming around the corner. So I think this would be a huge safety factor in terms of kids walking to school. So I hope we can go ahead and do this.
So we haven't gotten to design, like we don't know the cost yet or anything, and we're just kind of starting out.
I've done my own internal estimate, with the construction cost. I'm estimating around $75,000. We need approximately $6,000 to $8,000 in addition to that to perform the survey that I mentioned. And then there may be some legal costs associated with easements, and then a contingency there. So tonight's request is for $100,000.
Is there like any possibility to get grant money like this Complete Streets, like the for the schools? Safety, what those various grants that we've had in the past?
Yeah, those grants do exist. There's a process for applying for those. In general, we try to, if it's going to be federally aided, there's sort of a minimum project size that we would like to pursue, and this is much smaller than that. The federal aid process also takes multiple years, whereas with these city funds, we can move more quickly.
Okay. Anything else for John?
John, I have a couple quick questions, just to clarify, because I will send a request to the bond council for the ordinance. We need the funding will be for construction and survey. In terms of engineering, did you say there's any need for that?
I plan to do it myself in-house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the resolution that you need, the bond ordinance would take care of all of number 2 on your committee report.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
it wouldn't necessarily handle number 1.
Okay.
Right, so.
Yep. So yeah, if you want to scratch number 2, that's fine if it's going to be a separate thing. But yeah, so relative to seeker, This is not a type 2 action and not a type 1 action, reading the seeker. So it's an unlisted action, but it falls to the Common Council to declare lead agency and make a finding of the environmental significance.
What is, are you rewriting?
I'm gonna rewrite, I'm
Just-
gonna take section two will be stricken. That will be a request from bond ordinance. This will be the solution.
So what are you writing up the bond?
I'm writing it to bond.
All right.
And then you're
Like
doing
this.
this. Because the bond takes care of all everything. in number two.
Well, I can see there's probably one homeowner who would not like to have a sidewalk because he or she doesn't want to shovel it, but.
But they know their grass.
Pardon?
But they know their grass.
They mow their grass. No, I mean, it's a responsible, it's a piece of street, never said. But having additional work, but I think everyone understands the severity of the situation. Especially because people have been parking on their lawns, parking in their driveways when they take their kids down, so it's really. Quite a hassle.
I'd like to see us finish Lucas, too.
That's where we go.
Constituents, about the gap on Lucas. Like Camelot.
Do you want to?
So there's that, and then there's
Yeah.
all of them, because a nice $10 million project with sidewalks on the years.
Big job. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody all set?
That's a federal.
Okay, we have a committee report here. Request for the Common Council to declare lead agency status relative to Sequard to determine any environmental significance concerning the Carolina Avenue sidewalk extension. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion,
Second.
but I want
Go ahead.
to discuss it. So what you're asking for is to us to make a finding of no significant impact. Based on. the
Well,
Right.
So I'll make that motion.
Do you have a problem?
No, we have no significant impact, and we should make that motion. We have no significant impact. This project will have no significant impact. On the environment,
And Paula, I mean.
right? The funds. I don't know this action.
I thought that, I was just waiting for a but.
Oh,
That's what it sounded like.
It sounds like that.
Yeah.
So.
So there's a motion in the second, so you can take a vote.
Okay.
Well,
Did somebody second that?
I second. it.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
It was
Okay,
quiet.
motion on the floor by Robert, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Here's the bond.
And part two, from engineering, a committee report. Request a bond ordinance in the amount of $100,000 to fund the construction of sidewalk on Carolina Avenue. Estimated financial impact of $100,000. Motion?
You'll do it again, yeah. We'll repeat that. I'll vote, motion and I'll second.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
It's good. I
Thank you
had
all.
to drive. I've had two kids, you know, Edson and Bailey, so it's.
You know,
definitely-
that it's a nightmare. Yeah. Especially when we're trying to encourage our children to walk to school.
Right.
And the only place they can walk is in the middle of the street. That's not a good thing.
Dawn, are you here for the next one too?
Yes, I am,
Uh,
together with Ruth Ann.
Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, John. You're still there.
yes.
All right. Next. We have a Mariners Pump Station project request.
Yes.
Are you doing this, Ruth Ann?
Oh, I'm sorry. Natalie submitted the request, but she's not here tonight. John is going to speak about this one and the culverts project, and I'll talk about the beach project. Those are the three grant-related resolutions we're asking for this evening. So, John, take it away.
Yeah, so for good evening again. For this project, the city currently owns a pump station at the foot of Broadway. It's actually almost within the restaurant, within the front door of the restaurant at Mariners Harbor. So it's been identified as one of the top 3 sewer pump stations needing replacement in the city due to the age, due to maintenance difficulties, due to its susceptibility to flooding and sea level rise. So the grants department made us aware of a new grant opportunity that we can apply for through the Department of State, the Coastal Rehabilitation and Resilience Grant. So the grant is focused on infrastructure that's currently susceptible to flooding and sea level rise. And we think that the Mariners pump station replacement project is a good candidate for that. So I think the request tonight is for us to authorize us to apply for a grant in the amount of $1.3 million, which represents 90% of the project cost. So under this grant program, the grant is expected to pay up to 90%. The city would be responsible for the remaining 10%. And this asks us to ask the Common Council to authorize the mayor to submit the application. And yeah, so that's the gist of it.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
But I said, well, wait, is it, this is a sewage pump station?
Yes, sewage. Yes.
Want to do those?
Hey, we like that.
We like that.
Okay, anybody else? All right. We have committee report. Request to authorize the mayor to submit an application to New York State DOS for a coastal rehabilitation and resilient grant and to execute an agreement and any and all related documents. Grant funds will be used to replace one city pump station number 18. The grant request will be up to 1.3 million. There is a required 10% match, which will be met with force account. Not sure what that is. What's force account?
In-kind labor. He's gonna work at the work.
Okay. Another grant and or if needed, bonding. Financial impact to be determined. Have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Big deal. Beautiful. Sweet, beautiful. $10,000.
That's better than feeling. Yeah. Ruth Ann, you're up again with the Kingston Point Swimming Facilities Project.
Yes, this is another application that's due the same day as the one John just described, and the next one that he will describe, they're all due on June 6th. And we are requesting a resolution to apply for the grant and allow the mayor to execute any related documents. This is the project that Julie is managing, and we have already won a $3.3 million award through New York Swims, and we're still seeking additional funding to be able to move forward with the project. So one thing I did want to ask, actually, I have a question for you. I noticed today that Julie submitted a request for placement on, I believe, Laws and Rules next week to talk about seeker for this project, and she is concluding that it's an unlisted action, but we have the standard line in this current resolution draft that says it's type 2. So I'm wondering, could we strike that line from this resolution for tonight?
Yes,
Okay,
it would be actually in the resolution, let me just.
It's in the middle of this.
It's the fourth whereas.
Yes, there it is.
great, thank you. Should I continue yet? Or
Unlisted, or do you want to leave it?
we should,
Leave it.
if it's not required, which I don't believe it would be required. I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Andrea?
I am just gonna strike it out.
The
Great.
entire clause.
Okay, thank you. So going back to the project description, this is the project where we're going to be constructing tiered beach levels on either on the upland, or to separate the upland areas. And Julie's currently negotiating the first grant contract, so we do anticipate that the final designs will take place all through the coming year. The grant, this particular grant does require a 10% match, so that's $111,000 that we're looking for in potential bonding for this. But we are still continuing to seek additional grant funds, and we may be able to use some force accounts to fulfill that match. That's essentially the basics of it. I did see Julie had submitted a lot of details about the project today, and I don't know if you had time to take a look at those, but if you have additional questions, I can answer anything at the moment.
Yeah, Ruth, I gotta tell you, I was quite impressed with the amount of people that were at the public hearing for the beach project. I don't usually see too many people at public hearings. It was nice. Nice to
That's
have
great.
out for a change. Great, it was very, very interesting. Well done.
I'll pass that along to Julie. She really was the lead on that.
Yeah. Felt good to see people actually interested.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is a pretty exciting project, actually. So we're looking forward. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. I love it.
great.
Okay, so we have a committee report. This is a request for authorization to apply for and execute an agreement and any and all related documents related to a grant from the New York State Department of State for a local waterfront revitalization program implementation projects fund in the amount of $1 million for the Kingston Point Beach Swimming Facilities Upgrades Project. The match requirement of 10% in the amount of $111,000. $111 will be provided by in-kind donation, force account, and or, if necessary, bonding to be requested. So the financial impact is to be determined. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Ruth Ann, you're still up.
Oh, great. Thank you. John is going to next speak about the culvert replacement project. I'm working on writing that application, but it's pretty technical, and John is better versed at this time to be able to speak about it. John?
Yeah. Evening again. So this next project has to do with the 3 crossings of the 12th Skill Brook. 12th Skill Brook parallels Wilbur Avenue, roughly from the DPW yard all the way down to the Rondout Creek. And we've had a report in our possession for over 6 years now that identified some deficiencies in 3 culvert crossings, so specifically Chapel Street, Brook Street, and South Wall Street crossings. These are currently corrugated steel pipe crossings that are well past their useful life. There's noted corrosion, and in addition to that, they're considered undersized, so they're not able to pass the full flow of the 12th Skill Brook under a heavy storm event. And finally, they pose a barrier to aquatic habitats. So all of those things together suggest a project should be done. This particular grant is through the DEC is pretty generous in that it pays up to 90% of the project cost. So for a roughly $2.8 million total project cost we've identified here, the city share would only be about 10% or $280,000. So we're here to request the authorization to apply and for the mayor to execute any needed documents so that we can apply for this grant and improve the 3 culverts.
Michelle?
Thank you. So this is down in Wilbur in Ward 9, and there's always significant flooding. So do you think that this will have a good substantial impact on eliminating some of that flooding?
Well, we know, I believe it's Brook Street has a history of the roadway overtopping.
Yeah.
That has happened more than once in the last, 10 years. So yes, this project increases that capacity so that happens either never or much less frequently. So these new culverts would be designed to pass, I believe, up to at least a 50-year event, meaning a 2% chance each year, whereas the current culvert sizes, I think, can have the ability to be overtopped in some cases on a 10-year event, meaning a 10% chance each year. So yes, this will help with those concerns. I think it's might be Chapel Street that one of these when it does overtop or even fail, there's a potential for people to be stranded,
Right.
with no other way out of their neighborhood. And so that makes these a real concern for public safety when that happens.
Yeah, and the basement flooding, and it's a lot that happens.
Yeah, however, I do want to just be clear, that these are primarily roadway projects, and it's not a project to improve flooding for everyone along the entire 12th Skill Brook. I wouldn't want to set that expectation, but it's more about preserving the city street and maintaining essential access. I'm actually not aware of any house that currently floods that would be directly improved by this. It's more, like I say, it's more about preserving the city streets.
Right. I know, like, even on Brook Street, some the boulders were getting washed away, and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very steep creek, and this project's not going to change that. It's still high velocity. There is a tendency for these culverts to collect debris, logs, boulders,
Bears.
branches.
We had a bear.
Okay. So, to some extent, these larger culverts will help pass some of that downstream rather than becoming obstructed.
They're gonna be culverts still, they're not gonna be bridges, right?
Right. More than likely, there'll be concrete box culverts. based on what we've seen on a preliminary design. You know, we're currently they're corrugated steel pipes that are more subject to corrosion and have a shorter life. Whereas if we can do concrete box culverts, they'll have a longer service life.
Because it's better choice. Michelle?
So what is like the time period that we're looking at if we get the grant and to completion?
Yeah, I think this grant has a goal of Ruth Ann may remember it, maybe within 3 years that they want to see completion. She may know more accurately than that.
Thank you.
I don't recall off the top of my head what the time frame was, but it will take a little bit of time before we hear about the award yet. So, and John, I'm not sure how long the design process will take for it.
Yeah, I mean, design on something like this could be 4 to 6 months. There's not much public involvement really needed, but we may need to acquire some easements for grading beyond what we currently have for street right-of-ways. I wouldn't expect it won't be extensive. We're not going to be acquiring, you know, anybody's house or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think you know, 2 years to from start of design to complete construction would be probably the fastest something like this could be done. If you encounter any kind of surprises, you know, 3 years might be more realistic.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, great. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a committee report. As usual, this is a request for authorization to apply for and execute an agreement and any and all related documents related to a grant from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for a Resilient New York program in the amount of $2,520,000 for the Twaskill Brook Culvert Replacements Project. The match requirement of 10% in the amount of $280,000 will be provided by in-kind donations, force account, and or if necessary, bonding to be requested, financial impact to be determined. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Brook Street, what was their first little?
Very wet.
Well,
Wherever you have a brook, it can get very wet.
There's a hill.
Right.
All of them. Yeah.
Closed down.
The very still there.
It might
Hanging in the woods.
like.
Oh, it's dead in the.
Yeah.
Oh.
What was that?
Big Ryan.
Baby bear, I don't know, he's, you know, it's. Oh.
Okay, moving on. It all begins and ends with John here.
yeah, well, everybody's here for me.
Oh, yeah, we got one last thing.
I think I said still.
Do you want to talk about the line switching?
It's fine. My communications regarding budget transfer. We had a position in our office that was budgeted only for a partial year. That individual retired. So I'm asking for funding to cover the retirement payout. We were able to pull some money for the position that was budgeted for, I think we budgeted for March. The person was hired in January, so we pulled out some months of pay and benefits.
Yeah.
So for out of a total of 28,699 retirement payout, well, 20,000 from contingency, we're using some other funds to cover some other overages, so. That's where we're at. I just want to say, I mean, to our department, we're between myself and Grants, our office and Grants, we're down 2 bodies. intentionally planned, but yeah, we are, when our accounts payable clerk retired. So last year, it's been a while, I have to, but, that, I believe was last year, that body wasn't filled. And then that position wasn't filled, we redeployed resource within our own office. We have a shared employee between our office and grants, that person came down and worked in our office. And then when our purchasing, assistant recently retired, that same person took on additional duties
Oh,
as
wow.
well. So, yeah, we're, pretty much full tilt with the people in our office, work, but it's pretty tight, but it's working. So, I mean, overall, pretty happy with the
Good.
work we're getting done, certainly busy. And certainly not a lot of, any unexpected absences certainly was an issue now for staff wise in the office, because we are so tight.
And so we have a committee report. Request approval of the attached budgetary transfer totaling $34,600 to reconcile 2025 budgetary accounts on a year-to-date basis. This transfer has a $20,000 financial impact due to a retirement payout. Got an impact is $20,000. Any questions?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
When opposed? Thanks. Deal.
Okay.
And here is the final.
I'm sick of hearing you all complain about these vouchers.
Yes.
The history is not really well known, and it's not well documented, which is why I wanted to go through today, because whatever we decide, I would like it to be, documented, so that the next person in my place can give a reason for why we do this or don't do this. So the whole idea, and John, you could jump in if you want and correct me if I say anything wrong or just add to it, was for oversight purposes, and because we are in charge of the purse to see all of these things, but I know on the other side of it, it is a lot and so much that folks don't feel like they're really actually paying attention to it. My personal feeling is I would always rather have oversight over things. So I don't know if there's a way that we could change it, so instead of 3 signatures, it's 1 signature, so it's more of a compromise, but I've signed a lot of these over the years. I do pay attention to what I'm signing real quickly. And there have been a couple where it actually prompted some questions, not many, but there definitely have been. And just that kind of gives me pause to not just get rid of this practice completely. Maybe altering it a little bit and then, instead of doing, that's the thing that we were doing, that Republicans doing, we're just completely wiping out the system. That may have a purpose, so, but I'm also not opposed to getting rid of it if folks are saying like you don't look at it all, it makes no difference, So I will let you all.
How often does our delay in signing them cost us interest payments on bills that are due? I know that has changed of late.
Interest payments infrequently.
Like more than 30 days.
Infrequently, I would say that I think the process adds time, doesn't necessarily, I would say, cost money per se often. I mean, might be some additional inquiries from vendors here and there. I mean, I think we have the process pretty fine tuned in my office now where as soon as they get back, and we're paying them pretty quick. I don't see much in the way of interest charges. It's hard to quantify, Bob, but I would say it's relatively minimal, that part of it.
And I know that we've received messages if there's something urgent. We are using. This is the advanced today.
Yeah, there's certainly like bills that go through before signature. And then there's some that leave out, because like central hubs and things like that, utility bills. Extremely time sensitive, bills of those natures, account bills. Traditionally not to council to sign it for.
Well, that's what I was also thinking, if we eliminated, instead of 3, just do 1. Then that might also be a quicker process.
Is there, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a question, there are 2 challenges that I face. One is that when I see a bill, I have no idea what the context is surrounding it. I don't know what part of the budget it's from, it's just an amount from a vendor, no context. So I don't know whether I should approve it or not, so, and if there, and occasionally there may be questions, but I'm wondering if people wanting to know what we're spending our money on could be solved by just doing view of the general bills, which we don't really look at, which are posted, on the council meetings. Like to do a general, just a review of that when we have our finance committee meeting. So if there are any questions, we could sort of see, because I just pulled it up. You can see all the bills that are going out, because when I'm signing, I'm not seeing all these vouchers. I'm just seeing a limited amount of them. So I don't even have the full, idea of what we're actually spending. So would that be something that we could, as a group, sort of substitute for signing off on the vouchers, is just to look through the general bills, because that is everything that you paid the previous month, correct?
I don't put bills together, so I don't attest to its accuracy.
And I would want, if we just say, everybody look at it, that's not gonna work.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if it just came up in a report, because I'm not looking at all of these vouchers. If I sign 30 of these, I don't know what the rest of them say. So I don't.
If you look at, I did a tally of last month's, I think, or last meeting, we did 189 vouchers. And 15 of them were between $1,000 and $3,000. And 7 were 4 to 6, 11 were 9,000, 11 were 16,000, and 1 was 33,000. Now, okay, I understand those that have significant dollars associated with it, but the ones that were less than, and in fact, there was more that was less than 3, and there was, not many that were really worth looking at. In my opinion. A $15 bill for Central Hudson. Kind of not really worth looking at.
I agree with that, but I do think that there are some that are worth looking at. So how do you, and I don't, especially after John just tells us how strapped the office is, we do. So separate, okay, you have a $300 limit. Then it's gonna be somebody in his office who's gonna have to do that, and I'd rather sign them, even the silly ones like that, so that we still are tracking the bigger ones that have a little bit more importance to them.
So John, can you tell us how many people, I see all the previous signatures that are on these before we even sign them. Can you tell me what the process is through which an invoice gets to your office, it goes to a department, just that process?
Yeah.
The eyes are already on it.
Sure. So generally speaking, a voucher would be delivered from, well, I should say this. The procurement process for anything as a purchase order is initiated by a purchase request from the department to our purchasing office. And that person looks in for appropriateness, if there's questions back and forth between that person and the department, or they would ask me. I'm heavily involved in purchasing, in light of, we just had someone retire, so, we're doing a lot of training and onboarding there, but. So that's how the purchasing process would initiate for a regular procurement where a purchase order is required, $1,000 or more, with limited exceptions. And then the order would go out. If there was no PO required, the department would just order on their own. Okay, and then from this point on, this process is pretty much the same. The invoice is delivered to the department. The department, once again, we're talking general about all types of orders, whether it's utility or some which aren't technically ordered versus supplies which are ordered. But they're gonna review that invoice for appropriateness. If it's a purchase order item, they're gonna match up against the PO.
Mhm.
So, okay, this looks fine. If they have the PO, there's a claim voucher, they would attach that invoice and some. If there wasn't, they would attach a voucher. And typically, with the larger departments, say Public Works is probably a good one. I don't want to misspeak on what they do there, but I would assume that it's normally the clerk of that office who, a clerk or a clerk type, employee, could be, admin assistant, principal accountant, senior accountant, whoever it is in each department is gonna process that. Right, and they're gonna have their set of eyes on it. They're then gonna present that to a department head,
Mhm.
a deputy, someone who's authorized to sign that voucher. So now, at that point, you've had procurement at least handle the procurement.
Right.
They've been involved. In terms of the invoice coming in, you now have one or two people at the department level who's probably has seen it. It then gets submitted to accounts payable. Accounts payable reviews it. They are reviewing it, processing it. They send it up to the common council. Common council then sees it, returns it to accounts payable. Accounts payable then batches a group of vouchers together, cuts checks. They're then presented to me or my deputy for review. The mayor and the city clerk also sign off on that list. To what extent they're doing a review. I think they're probably just signing the form. I don't want to speak to what review they are or aren't doing, but I'm certainly going through at a detailed level of these. I think everyone's review is a little bit different. There's certain things that I key in on. I have certain vendors that I know that I'm looking for different things. I have a trained eye to look for certain things. I look for unusual things. I look for one-offs of, your reimbursement type vouchers for expenses paid.
Right.
I tend to, drill down on those. The Central Hudson Mills, I'm trained to look for sales tax. I'm looking for different things. So,
Mhm.
I'm looking for different errors, but, there's a number of eyes on them. My only question, I don't know what has been done in terms of the research on the legal end is, I think it's come back as what legally are we required to do, in terms of, who's, I don't know if that's something that should be codified or not, but, certainly when it comes to like our auditors, I would like to have something that says, if we go say from 3 to 1 or we change it, this is our authorization. I
Right.
mean, quite frankly,
Yeah.
they haven't pressed me on why there's 3 and where is that in the code either, but I would certainly think if I change the system,
Yes.
I could be asked, where's my,
Has there any,
Where's the oversight? Yeah.
has there ever been, I've been here 12 years, I've never heard of any, has there been any kind of issue with assigning something incorrectly and, I'm not even sure what I'm looking for in an answer here. And the fact that we sign it and maybe it was not, maybe the amounts weren't right on there. Did anything like that ever come back? Was anything ever audited? Oh geez, you approved this and it really shouldn't have been approved? Anything like that? I mean, I've never heard of anything like that.
I've had a handful of instances where I've had issues with a voucher that were that were inappropriate maybe, but it's very rare. It's very rare. I mean, and nothing in the last, I can even think of in the last 5 years. I mean, it's been nothing of note. And anything that I've seen is probably in my distant past here. Where I've had questions of appropriateness or legality of what's being presented to me for payment, but no, for the most part, I mean, the things I find, honestly, Steve, are, we'll find like sales tax issues, sometimes I'll see where, somebody like is a part of a project, a new central hubs mechanic gets opened up. We're trained to look, is there sales tax on that? Sales tax on it, so we spent 5 years contacting Central Hudson, going back and forth, and like 400
Right.
emails, phone calls, to get sales tax removed, but, things like that, and, mistakes we'll see periodically, but in terms of like, if you'd say fraud or anything of that nature, no, really.
But I think that's part of the issue here. We're not experts, we're not auditors, we're not accountants, we're not anything of the kind. We're just signing it. And I know I've said this before when I first started. I mean, I would spend a lot of time looking at those things and analyzing, oh geez, why are we paying this and should we be paying this and why are we spending money? And I was doing all that, but I always anytime I asked, I got a satisfactory answer for it. So after a while, you just kind of start signing and signing and signing. I mean, who has the time to sit here with a pile like that and review every number on it? It's a lot of time.
Especially if you're trying to do other work. I mean,
Right.
I'll say this, am I trained to do, for audit? Yes, I was in public
Right.
accounting and auditing for 8 years, but I will say this, is that I'm not gonna catch every single thing. I'm human, right? I mean, so obviously, we have multiple eyes on things. There could be something that my clerk catches that I don't. That if we look the same voucher, you ever have one of the situation where you look the same thing 5 times, and all of a sudden you see something you didn't see before? It happens, but we do our best. I mean, we try to be thorough. We have people who I think at the department level are pretty detail oriented. I mean, I get a lot of questions at that level. Our accounts payable clerk now is pretty intense on those vouchers when she gets them. I mean, I try to be as drilled down as much as I can, so. I would say there's no value, Steve, in terms of like catching something on vouchers, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of eyes on them already.
Well, I don't view us signing the vouchers as catching mistakes in the accounting or double checking your math. I see it more as the council kind of taking a 10,000 foot view of where the money is going and seeing if there's anything that's suspicious, but they have questions on, not necessarily like, oh, 2 + 2 = 4, not 5. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why I think, like, I guess I don't care that much about this, although it may sound like I do. But I just,
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I-
what you do.
because I think that the council having oversight over things is always good. And there's so little thing that we have oversight, in my opinion, or that we use our oversight, that taking away one seems.
But, this money's already spent. This is real. The stuff has been delivered. We've already spent the money. So if we were to find something good that we don't want to pay for. It's already been received, if Ed bought a tire and the tire came, we said, I don't like the tire. Too late. We've already bought it. So, looking at it to get information about where we're spending our money makes sense to me. I like that idea. I like Sarah's idea of looking at this. But as far as rejecting one is concerned, we've already spent this money. So the question then becomes, okay, if we're gonna say, I don't like this, well, okay, what does that do for us? What does it do for you? I mean, we've already got it.
Can I just add something to say? And I think you're saying some similar things. Maybe I look at it a couple different ways, just from the way my brain's trained, is that I look at the council reviewing these vouchers for 2 things. One is to see if, is there like something on it, like, I will say fraud. I mean, it's another item of fraud.
As you should.
Is there, it could be a small amount, but there might be something on there. The council has a question of why are we buying this from this, whatever that is. But in terms of overall oversight of where the money's going, looking at vouchers by itself isn't really going to give you that picture, because it's a pile of vouchers, the vendors, but where are they being charged? What category is it? Like, you're not So the monthly reports I give the common council, if you look at the emails, those munis accounting reports I send out actually show the breakdown of this is how much, I've spent off supplies in this department. This is all that. So the summary level is going to show you where the money's going. It just doesn't give you the detail of the vendor and like you would see, okay, well, the comptroller spent $2,000 in office supplies on a year-to-day basis. And we budgeted 2,500. Right, so it's gonna show you where the money's all going, but it's not gonna show you that 2,000, well, 1,000 went to W Mason and $400 went to this, and like.
That opens up a whole other, can of worms. Conceivably, do we go through the vouchers and say, I don't like that thing? And I don't want you to do business with that thing. I mean, that's, one of the possible outcomes of this, and I suspect if we went back many, many years, there may have been that kind of an issue.
I'll tell you, there was, I only have one story like this. In all these years, there was one alderman who the same amount came in, it was for a delivery for something, and she did not want that to be done. Why are these people getting it? They don't need that, and she wouldn't sign it. So it went back in a box and somebody else signed it. So she really didn't.
Right.
She didn't get her way. She didn't, nothing really happened. And I guess the only comment I'm gonna make, I wouldn't call this oversight, but you do, just from looking at these things, you retain a lot of it, just by accident, the fact that you're sitting there signing them, and you do get a good idea. So maybe Sarah's got a good point that maybe we should just get a list and look at it, and we'll be getting the same information without sitting here for 2 hours, signing something. But I'm sure there's gonna be people that, okay, here's the list for this month. Okay, that's good, I mean, you gotta rely on their civic duty to look at those things, but I don't think that's a bad idea. Because we're, in essence, that's really all we're doing is looking at who's providing service and
how much
what we're
they're getting
paying. And something will stand in if we pay somebody $35,000, well, that kind of stands out and you take note, but all these little things.
And the general bills list who all the vendors are, so if we had a question about why we're using a certain vendor, that would come up. We're looking at the.
Yeah,
general
it's good that we see that information.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
it's there.
it's
And you
great
have the
to know,
salary.
yeah. And people, they ask questions about who gets paid in this city. So, it's nice to have a little knowledge. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is like urban legend, but wasn't there like a separate meeting at some point to
That's what I've heard.
To do
to
what?
these vouchers? Because attention was paid. to-
Oh, really? I don't recall if they. I recall years ago, when I first came on board, the vouchers were being signed off by the different advisory groups, you call them, whatever you want to call them, like the Public Works Commission, Rec Commission.
Oh, wow.
Et cetera. The council was maybe signing off, I think, on just the city hall vouchers.
That's why there's still some who say commissioners.
Yeah, so then
Interesting.
the somewhere along the line, it was probably unofficially, but probably starting, somewhere leading into tying into what Steve's saying, probably the same group, at the same time. So at a similar time, it was determined that there were questions as to what authority the commission had
Oh,
to be
that makes
signing these vouchers, right? They're not elected officials. They're not the ones answering to the taxpayers. So the council wanted more oversight to sign vouchers because they felt like, appropriately so, you are the elected officials who are accountable to the taxpayers. So the council took back all the signing of the vouchers. I don't recall if any of that was, I believe at one point there probably was separate meetings. I just feel like if that were happening, it was short-lived. I don't. But it was still it was still the same group of people signing, it was still all, there was always three. But prior to that, it was the commission signing it. But once again, I mean, if you feel a little disconnected from vouchers, I think they were even more disconnected from it in some ways, right?
Yeah, at least we oversee the budget, we see the budget.
Yeah, so.
Now, in your experience, if you, with other municipalities, like, I'm not familiar with this being a practice in other municipalities where council members sign off on all the vouchers.
I see, before coming here, my experience was mainly with towns. And as like an accountant auditor on towns, and their practice generally was. They signed off on all the bills, but they did it at one monthly meeting. They had like, I remember the town of Hurley, they had like it's called an abstract of vouchers, and they went through. I don't recall whether they actually signed the bills, but they approved the list of bills.
They approved the list of bills.
And I don't recall whether or not they were physically signing them all or not, but they approved. And they approved the list of bills.
Which is different.
And but you're already doing that, are you? I mean, aren't you approving the list? Are you, or is there,
Well,
it's just listed on?
Yes, but it's something that I say, but I don't, it doesn't, it's ceremonial.
We're not reviewing the list of bills.
And that's why I'm hesitant, like this forces us to do something.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it'll be anything except ceremonial.
Right, well, I think at the town level, what I recall is the board would come in and review the bills.
When I first got to council, I remember I came in on my own time and read through the bills just to see what I was looking at when I was signing. They gave that up. This really wasn't a meaningful activity, but it was an orientation. But that was-
Thanks, I personally don't mind it, I know it's like annoying, but I feel like. It's hard to know everything that goes on here, right, or every decision or. Every settlement, I don't know, I learned a lot that I would not know, and I do think that. It has value.
Does it add value? I understand that there's some comfort on your part with us looking at it, I mean, it's not, but does it add value?
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I never would want to suggest the council not, because. I'm about transparency and whatever the council chooses, I mean.
Right,
If it chose even to review more, I'd say fine, and we'll make it available. It's really, I think the council suggested, like Bob said, does it add value? Is this a process that you want to do? I suspect if I contacted 5 cities that have 5 different processes.
Probably.
Based on my experience.
I appreciate like the idea that a clerk and other people have had their eyes on these vouchers, but it's the checks and balances, right, like. Our bridges.
And you don't
Yeah.
think that would be the same if we looked through the general list of bills to see who the vendors are, how much they're being paid, without actually having to sign, but just sort of reviewed that general list?
You can't see if it's a one-time bill or a monthly bill.
But you can't see anyway.
Can we see this?
Which ones of these are one time, and one month?
Yeah, I was just looking at the list, I saw a Granicus bill, on the bill list. I can't tell if that's our yearly subscription or is that a monthly subscription,
Okay.
but I guess you would be able to tell.
But does that make a difference?
I think so, I think it's insightful. I'm reticent to give up any authority that we have as paltry as it is.
That's how I feel.
But I think it's I never would have approved this buying new police cars if I didn't look and see how much we were paid to repair these things. Like, it's a useful operational insight. And that has changed my votes. But also with that said, there are some vouchers I refuse to sign. I don't advertise it, but there are some that I don't sign because I disagree with the vendor.
Because
It's a minor rebellion.
but is it, that's an interesting ethical issue.
But then there's some that I don't see.
He
Because
doesn't
I can see what
have
I
a duty he doesn't have a duty to sign if he doesn't, what do you mean ethical?
Who doesn't like the vendor?
He doesn't have to sign it.
No, but if it's a lowest responsible bidder, your personal view of them really shouldn't affect whether you pay them.
But I'm not with
For what
when
it's-
the people sign a $40 voucher. More than $40, but.
I mean, the most amount of information you're gonna glean is by looking at the voucher, right? I mean, if I were to look at the list of bills. Probably, I mean, just because I'm a more experienced, right? I mean, I'm gonna know, if you show me a list of bills before I even saw the vouchers, I'm gonna know what probably 75% of them are.
Right.
But there's gonna be bills that a vendor one-offs that I wouldn't know what it was even for unless I saw. Just, that's.
Which you
Yeah, but
Kind of
you-
speaking of
but
both
you
your
do-
points.
But if you had never,
No, I'm saying if I were in your shoes.
if you've never seen a
Yeah, if I
voucher
never seen a voucher and I just saw a random name, because you'll have random names. that come
Oh, yeah,
out.
there are plenty of random.
But if
Right,
you never
that's,
saw
one-off.
KDD, Pete Stadium Diner. What do you think we're buying it for?
If I never saw
If
it,
you never saw the voucher, what would it?
well, I know what I'm buying it for.
Yeah, but if you did, I would think it's a pizza party or something, rather than an obligation that we have to
Feed someone that.
feed someone.
Right, I get it. But, you know, for the $10 hamburger, I trust the chief. You know, maybe that's, you know, I don't think that's displaced, but it's conceivable that someday, you know, in some scenario, you'd have city officials you didn't trust. I don't think we have that. I don't,
No, I don't think we
No,
have that now. We
I
don't.
don't believe that we do either, but if something were to change and something happened, I would not be.
I think it's seeing authority.
this, I'm gonna have to resign, right?
And then you hear, I think you said them all.
Well,
Sounded.
Madam President, where are we?
Right now, we have sort of a split vote here, but this isn't the whole council.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk to the other members of the council.
Well, I know some of them feel. You probably do.
Yeah, so I'm just bringing it back. We would like to continue discussing it.
I mean, I would hate to give up over, say, completely. I mean, even if it's only a list of what we paid out.
In the meantime, there's a big stack here, fine.
There he
You
is.
two would like to sign them, so you can sign them.
I know, I was.
Yeah.
But again, in that summary, is that something that we could go through like on a monthly basis? You know, to just look at the summary of things and then you could go through that with us and see if we have any questions, so we see the way to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's the year-to-date budget reports I send out, that if you chose to go that route, you could ask questions on certain line items. I mean, it's basically going through the entire budget, so I don't think we'd want to go line by line. But you could, I think someone here could go like if, I know there's different levels of interest, right? But someone could go through and, hey, you know, we're over budget by this amount here. Is this something that can you explain to me, you know, what's happened here?
Right.
Why are we at where we're at with that account? And then I can look into it and, you know, that would be constructive feedback. I mean, those are things I look into, but, certainly I think from an oversight standpoint, that would be. I mean, that also tees up the budget. I mean, you start seeing line items that are starting to go over. That could mean that we're seeing pressure on certain item that then you'll eventually see a budgetary request increase the following year for that line. If it's like a recurring thing, but like you'll see, like essentially what I sent out on a monthly basis, this is a bad example because we're still in March. So I sent the March numbers last month. But what you'll see is every expense account in general fund, what the budget adopted by the council is in one column.
Yeah.
What the budget is now after you've passed your amendments and any transfers.
Yeah.
And what we've spent year to date.
Yeah.
And then, any purchase orders that encumber balances would be in there, and then what the available balance is. And if it's negative, you would expect there's gonna be a budget transfer, going to be requested, or there might be something that we have to internally look at. There could be like a bill that was paid that wasn't charged against the PL or something, but. You know, it's certainly a tool, whether or not you use that in conjunction with looking at, you know.
So that's not a question. Why it's free?
I don't know, that's why I suggested one.
I think at one
Well,
point,
yeah,
it was the
it's-
majority of I
The
think,
majority of a commission, maybe, or something.
I think something like that, or 3 out of 5 here, I don't know where that originated, but it's been 3 as long as I remember, but whether there's any.
Basis for that.
I don't.
It does seem like a legacy of the pre-charter formula.
Exactly,
Yeah, it's kind of.
exactly, it seems
So it
like.
goes back to the commission. I mean,
Right.
the commission's all
Okay.
I'm gonna
fine.
reach out to my friend that's an auditor.
Anyway,
Anyway.
somebody would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I can't.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Tony,
We have, we have a.